Like Claire said, my name is Justin Bradfield. Here's our Constitution amendment for June. The 112th Congress has given us many egregious pieces of legislation. The NDAA, the extension of the Patriot Act, SOPA, CISPA. They failed to pass a budget for years. And now Democrats in the Senate have proposed another scheme to make sure that the U.S. tax slaves, citizens, pay their fair share to the government. Now, people leave the U.S. and give up their citizenship for many reasons. However, some senators think that if one of those reasons is the avoidance of high tax rates, then a crime has been committed and the federal government needs to take action. The expatriation prevention by abolishing tax-related incentives for offshore tenancy, if you look at that, it spells out Expatriate Act. I hate their names. Attempts to punish individuals who give up their U.S. citizenship. The bill calls for increased capital gains taxes upon exit and also calls for continued taxation after the renunciation or relinquishment of citizenship. On top of that, if the IRS decides that you have a large enough net worth and thinks that you left to lessen your tax burden, it can tell the Department of Homeland Security that you are inadmissible to the U.S. So if you leave the U.S. to go to a place like Singapore that has a generally lower tax burden, no matter what your actual reasons for leaving, the IRS can determine that you left to avoid U.S. taxes and deem you a specified expatriate. As such, you are continually taxed in the U.S. I don't see how they're going to collect these taxes if you live in Singapore, but
they won't let you back in.
They won't let you back in, exactly. Yeah, and you're not allowed to re-enter the U.S. at all. On top of this ridiculousness, the bill specifies that anyone who expatriated within the past 10 years of the bill's passage may be considered a specified expatriate and taxed and made admissible as such. This bill also specifies that the Treasury Department will come up with a punishment, tax, so that these specified expatriates may get waivers for the inadmissibility. The bill suggests that this punishment be paying the U.S. government an amount equal to the taxes that the U.S. government lost because you left. So, what does the Constitution say about all this? Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3 states that no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. I argue that this piece of legislation violates both prohibitions in the clause. A bill or writ of attainder is an act of the legislature declaring a person guilty of some crime and prescribing punishment without any judicial trial. The use of such bills under British law allowed for much abuse and corruption, which is why the founders prohibited their use by the federal government. In United States v. Leavitt, the Supreme Court set criteria for determining if an act qualifies as a bill of attainder. 1, if the bill specifically identifies people to be punished. 2, imposes punishment. And 3, does so without any judicial trial. Using these criteria, we can judge if the Expatriate Act is a bill of attainder. 1, does it specifically identify people to be punished? Yeah. The bill defines who may be considered specified expatriates. However, it is the Department of the Treasury that specifically designates and imposes punishment. And does the bill impose punishment? Well, yeah, it imposes increased taxation and inadmissibility, and that's pretty much a punishment. In reading this bill, there is no judicial trial or any judicial remedy for those deemed specified expatriates. In reality, this act gives power to the Departments of Treasury and Homeland Security to emit and execute bills of attainder. As with all powers given to the executive, if Congress does not originally have the power itself, it cannot delegate it to the executive. In this case, since Congress may not pass bill of attainders itself, the Expatriate Act is unconstitutional in that regard. Ex post facto laws are acts that change legal consequences of actions that were committed in the past. This type of law is clearly unethical, since it criminalizes individuals who committed actions that were not criminal at the time of the action. In this case, the Expatriate Act allows the Treasury Department to consider expatriates from the past 10 years, 10 years in determining who is a specified expatriate. This imposes punishment on individuals who expatriated in the past, and according to the law at the time, were not subject to such punishment. As such, the Expatriate Act contains an ex post facto provision that unjustly and unconstitutionally causes injury to individuals who committed actions that the law did not provide punishment for. At its heart, this bill is about controlling the free flow of people and capital. In attempting to control the outflow of taxable capital from the U.S., politicians are inadvertently applying capital controls and hampering market forces. The effects of similar acts and rhetoric can already be seen as banks around the world refuse to service American clients so that they can avoid the IRS from insinuating itself into its business. Free flow of capital allows individuals to invest their resources in the most profitable, i.e. most needed, location. The bill assumes that all profit and capital accumulation made in the U.S. is primarily owned by the U.S. government, which reluctantly lets you keep a chunk of it for yourself. If you try to move to a jurisdiction that lets you keep a bigger chunk of your property, it taxes you. And it equates this with theft, for some reason. Since the passage of the 16th Amendment, the income tax, the government has been able to say that the first X% of your income belongs to it, and it lets you keep the rest. This act specifies that even when you renounce or relinquish your citizenship, the U.S. government still owns the income you make from the property, even after you leave. This attitude is detrimental to liberty and will lead to an exodus of capital from the U.S.